written some wonderful books. In the last year and a half, I bet I've probably read 4 or 5 of his books. He has a blog, which Dick and I get every morning, and we read it. Sometimes we critique it, we talk with each other about it, and sometimes we agree wholeheartedly. It makes us, sometimes we talk, this is a little off. But I really enjoy reading this gentleman's stuff. He's just brilliant. He also has some videos, and this last week I was watching one of his videos, and he was asked if you had 1 minute and you had the whole world's attention for 1 minute, what is it that you would try to communicate to them? And he thoughtfully kind of hemmed and hawed. He said, maybe this, no, maybe no. Then he finally said, if I had 1 minute to talk to everybody in the world, he said, I would ask them to allow the pain of other people to influence them. To allow the pain of others to get into your heart. To allow the pain of the world to influence you. That really hit me hard. We look at Jesus, and in John chapter 11, he stands outside of his buddy Lazarus' tomb, and it says what? Jesus wept. Jesus wept. Jesus allowed the pain of others to get into his heart. It was his mission. We'll get back to that. I kind of struggled with today's message, and that's a good thing. But I feel as if I need to extend an apology. I have forsaken my first love. Now, don't get me wrong. When I talk about my first love, I talk about Jesus. I talk about my bride. I talk about my daughter. I've not forsaken my first love there. But when it comes to my ministry, I sometimes feel lately like I have forsaken my first love. I've allowed myself within step 7 to get a little cynical. And that's not good, folks. We have a mission statement here. Sharing Jesus with the addicted. That's been around for a long time. That's what I need to do. That's what we need to do as a community here, is we share Jesus with the addicted, and that means everybody in the room, because we all put something in front of Jesus on occasion. I need to get back to my roots here at Step 7. And I'm not blaming myself. This is a tough ministry. We work with some challenging individuals. It can get a little tough. I can get cynical. I've seen it happen in all leadership around here. We need to get back to what it is we're doing, though. Jesus says, I want you to share me with the addicted. That's what we sell around here. We have Jesus. We have the gospel. Jesus Christ and Him crucified. That's what we have. That's what we need. I want to tell a quick story here about a gentleman that I ministered to years ago. And I need to be real careful, because I don't want this to look like a story that's all about me, because it's not. I was obedient in this story, but I was kicking and screaming as I was obedient. So please know that. This is not about me. This is about the blessing that I received by allowing the pain of someone else to come into my life. But again, I did it kicking and screaming. Trust me. The first assignment I got as a pastor was down at the Franktown Church. I was the associate pastor. And a couple of people in here will know who I'm talking about today. I was immediately given 2 job descriptions within that associate pastor's picture. I was to start up a men's ministry, which we did, had a ball with, right guys?
We'll have it today.
And I was also in charge of all hospital visitation. I've been a chaplain, a volunteer chaplain for a long time. I love the hospital, I love the atmosphere. My boss at that time didn't want to have a thing to do with it. He said, it's all yours. So I did all of the hospital visitation. There's probably some people in the room here that I visited way back then. We were having a staff meeting one day, and my boss told me that he wanted me to go visit, or he wanted me to call, excuse me, this gentleman by the name of David. He was getting ready to go in for surgery to have one of his lungs removed, okay, from cancer. He was the husband of a woman who came to our church religiously. She was always there, but he didn't want to have a thing to do with us. In fact, he didn't like us at all. But I was given the job of giving him a call, and it's like, oh, come on. Really? So a couple days later, I had some time, and I said, you know, I better just get this over with. And I gave him a holler. And I said, you know, Dave, this is Pastor Tom from Franktown SDA Church, and I was just wondering if I could help you, if there's anything the church or I could do for you. And he laughed at me, okay? He just laughed at me. And it was like, nice try, Pastor. He says, but you've got nothing I want or need. He was very rude, okay? I expected it. I got off the phone. I'd done my job. I can go report at staff meeting. I did my job, okay? A couple of weeks later, I was up at the conference office. And I forget what I was doing there. I might have been picking up my paycheck, but that's up by Porter Hospital. And he was actually in Swedish Hospital, which is just a couple miles away from there. And I'm driving home from the conference office, and I get this message that I need to go see David. And I pulled over the car. I had a feeling, I was almost positive this was the Lord talking to me. And it was the last thing I wanted to do. I pulled over the car, and I bet I sat there for 5 or 10 minutes, and I argued with God. I said, no, Lord, you know, I've done enough. I have done enough. And he just kept pounding me. And finally it was like, all right, I'll go see him. I pulled into the Swedish parking lot. And again, this is not about me, because I was not happy, folks. And I went up, I went to the ICU, found his room, and walked in the door, and here's this little old guy in a lot of pain, tubes coming out of everywhere, had his lung taken out. And I walked over and introduced myself to him. And we had a nice conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I asked him, I said, you know, David, would it be okay if I came and visited you when you get out of the hospital? And he said, you know, Pastor, I would like that. Yeah. So a couple of weeks later, I called him up. And he said he'd make some coffee, and I said, I'll be right over. It was on a Thursday. I remember that like it was yesterday. And I went over and sat down with David. And he said to me, he said, you know, Pastor, I need to apologize to you. He said, when you walked in the door at the hospital, he said, I knew exactly who you were. And he said, I was shocked after the way I treated you on the telephone that you would come and see me. And again, this isn't about me. This is about the blessing that I received because I allowed the pain of someone else to get into my heart. He said, I can't believe you came and saw me. For the next year and a half, we did Bible studies. Every Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, he had coffee going and we did Bible study. About, I don't know, 8 or 9 months maybe into it, he said, Pastor, would you please baptize me?
Amen.
Amen. Woo. I baptized him and his granddaughter at the same time. Some of you guys might have been there. His cancer came back with a vengeance. And this man, I've never seen a change in an individual like I did David. He ended up over here at the Johnson Center in hospice care. And I'd go visit him, and I'd wheel him outside into the sun, and he was just all smiles and laughter. He was dying. We knew he had a couple of weeks maybe left. And he would introduce himself to people, and he'd call them over and say, this is my pastor, you gotta meet my pastor. And it was just one of the greatest blessings in my life. And it's only because I allowed his pain into my heart, and I didn't want to do that. A couple weeks later, I was actually going to play golf that day. I got a call from the nurse, and she said, Pastor, you probably should get over here. So I ran straight over to the place. Walked into his room, and he was having a bad time. He was kind of thrashing around, and I was happy to see that when he saw me, he calmed down a little bit. His wife showed up a few minutes later, and he kind of just gently went into a semi-comatose state. And we sat there all day long with him. We had lunch, we had dinner. I mean, I bet we were there for at least 12 hours. And he was just laying there. And his wife finally reached over and grabbed him by the hand. And she said, David, why don't you just let go? Just go ahead and let go. And at that point, she had now given me permission to say a prayer, which you don't say as a pastor without permission. She gave me permission to say this prayer. So I told her, I said, you know, sweetie, how about we just have a quick little prayer here? And we spent the whole day just kind of watching his vitals, because we were just waiting for the moment, waiting for the time. It was obviously right there. So and I laugh, and yet I'm so thankful for this whole relationship. So I said this prayer. I said, Lord, you know, would you just go ahead and take David? Just go ahead and take him. Got done saying the prayer, and we looked up and we looked over at his vitals, and within 45 seconds, he was gone. He passed on after I said the prayer. And I'll never forget this, because here's his wife, who's been married to him forever, and she's just lost her husband, and she looks over at me and she says, Pastor, I have never seen an answer to prayer so fast in my whole life. The whole scene with David, from the day I talked to him on the phone, telling me, go away, nice try, to watching the Lord get into his life and change his heart of stone into a heart of flesh, to this moment where his widow is thanking God for his speed in answering that prayer. It was just such a blessing. And it doesn't happen, folks, if I don't allow the pain of the situation to get into my heart. Okay? Revelation 2:4. You have forgotten your first love. And I look at that in my ministry here at Step 7 right now, and I need to get back to my first love. And that's allowing the pain of the men that come through the door struggling with drugs and alcohol to affect me in a way where I can truly love and minister to them. I need to get back to that. And I want to just kind of tie this into a situation that's going on at Pensive right now. It's a little bit of an announcement. Some of you might know this already, but you might as well hear it from the horse's mouth. We made a very tough decision this last week, Brian and Tom and I. We had, it's never really happened, but in like the last 6 weeks, we've had a whole bunch of guys move on from Step 7. Most of them, I would say, were successes. A couple of them, maybe not so. It's hard to measure success around here. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But we ended up with just a whole bunch of empty beds. And I tell you, I'm a numbers guy. That's how I measure success, and I need to quit that. Because I measure success quantitatively. It's all about numbers. How many beds are full? How many people are at church? That's how I typically measure success, and that's not what the Lord would have us do here at Step 7. We need to measure success around here qualitatively. Changed lives. Amen. That's what matters. Yep. Changed lives. We made a decision this last week to shut down one of the houses. And let me tell you, that is a blessing, my friends. Because it's going to allow us to get more focused on the men at Step 7 that are serious about getting sober and getting into a right relationship with Jesus Christ. I am tired, and I'm not pointing anybody out here. We will not have people that are just hanging out for cheap rent anymore. That will not happen at Step 7. We are here to change lives. And if you want to be part of that, that's awesome. But what we have to sell around here is right there, period. I need to get back to my first love. You know, we have a mission statement around here. I had Brian write it up here for me. Sharing Jesus with the addicted. We've had that for a long time. That's what we do. A mission, folks. The Bible doesn't just speak about mission. The Bible is about mission. Okay? If you look at the Old Testament, the heroes of the Old Testament, look at Abraham. He was told to go. He had a mission. Look at Moses. He had a mission. He was told to go. Look at the New Testament. Look at Peter. Peter, some people would say he was the leader of the Jewish folks. And then we look over at Paul. Who was Paul sent out to teach?
Gentiles.
The Gentiles. Okay? They had a mission. And then we look at the man himself, Jesus. Luke 19:10 says that he came to seek and to save that was lost. That would be all of us, folks. Jesus had a mission, and it's you and me. He gathered 12 people around him. He focused on 3. And look at what happened. You know, if you look at the last chapters of Mark and Matthew, in Mark it says, go and preach the gospel. Go, it says. In Matthew, in the Great Commission, it says, go and make disciples. We have a mission here. We also, folks, have a vision here. And that's where I want to finish up here. Our mission statement says a Christ-centered vision of freedom. That's the vision, okay? It's a future statement. A Christ-centered vision of freedom. That's what we're all looking for around here. It's freedom, okay? Kirk preached on it fantastically last week. But then notice what it says here. Strengthened by the leadership skills taught. And then we bring in our 3 ministries. In our small groups, our sober living homes, and our Sabbath morning celebrations. So again, we look at that, and if we're going to try to measure success out of that, it's real easy to get quantitative here. You know, Oh, well, how many small groups do you have? How many sober living homes do you have? That's not what we're doing around here. We're about raising up leaders around here. That's how we're going to measure success at step 7, is raising up leaders. It says here, strengthened by the leadership skills. And every one of us needs to strengthen our leadership skills. I don't care if I've got a day's worth of sobriety. Maybe my leadership skill today is just to lead the man in the mirror. And I'm not going to go to the liquor store today. If that's where it's at, that's fine. But tomorrow, we're going to continue to strengthen these leadership skills. Okay? I look at some of the guys in the room right now, and I've talked with 2 of them to ask them if it's okay for me to mention them today, and it's Tom and Brian, 2 men I work with every day. 2 men that when they first came here were in trouble. When Tom first got here years ago, he could barely look me in the eye the day I met him because of the shape he was in. And he knew the Lord. He just needed to get back to the Lord. But look at his leadership now.
Amen.
Amen.
When Brian first came to step 7, he was as angry as any man I've ever met. He didn't want to be around people. He didn't like people. Today, I think one of his favorite things to do is to grab up new guys that come to step 7 and take them shopping. And half the time, I think he does it with his own money, and he's like, Tom, he won't bring me receipts. Leadership, you guys.
Amen.
It's not about how many beds we have full. I look out and I see a Travis sitting here. It's all about leadership, you guys. And we look to the Lord for that standard. You know, I look at these guys, and it's very easy to recognize that they have allowed the pain of others to get into their hearts. Richard Rohr says, if I had a minute and I could talk to the whole world, I would tell them to allow the pain of others to influence you. I want to end with a question here for everybody. Where is it in your life? Who is it, might be a better way to state this. Who is it in your life that by allowing the pain in their life to come into your heart, you might be able to serve better and lead like Jesus? Allow the pain of others into your heart. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for all that you've done for us. As Bob said, we thank you for creating us. We thank you for guiding and teaching us. Lord, I just think of the lessons you give us on a daily basis. Today, Lord, I pray that you would help us all to remember that it is just not about us anymore. It's all about you, and it's about those that are around us. Help us to love them, Lord. Help us to serve them. Help us to actually engage, Lord, in the pain that they're going through. Help us to lift them up. And again, I just thank you, Lord, for all your blessings. I thank you for this ministry. Help us to make sure that we stay focused, Lord, on our mission and our vision. Change lives, Lord. And I thank you for that. We just love you, Lord. And we pray this as we always do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.